everybody today. If you'd like to, turn number 466. 466, we'll sing the first and fourth verses of Send the Light, and then we'll go to our individual classes. 466. There's a call and restless waves, send the light, send the light. There are souls to rescue, there are souls to save. Send the light, send the light, send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine from shore to shore. Send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine forevermore. Let us not grow weary in the work of love. Send the light, send the light. Let us gather jewels for a crown above. Send the light, send the light, send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine from shore to shore. Send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine forevermore. We go to our classes.
You go sleep and get back out, okay?
Turn your Bible to Psalm 84. We'll be at in just a moment. Psalm chapter 84. As we're continuing our study on that there's something special about this place. And as we know, we discussed something special about this place is talking about here, the actual, here in the reading of Psalm 84 is actually of the tabernacle and then giving reference back and forth between it and the temple. But then also we're going to see just explaining and moving forward to that of what you would find in the church that we would have today. And knowing that the church, of course, is not a building, it is the people and the importance goes along with it, where when you look back to the time that they're discussing here in Psalm 84, they actually are talking about a building. They're talking about, as we said, the tabernacle or the temple, going back and forth with those, and the importance of those because that was the dwelling place of God. But also we understand with us, it doesn't mean that God was just there, of course we all understand that, but that God dwells with us now, with the church and the people, and how great that is, and then talk about it in these verses. So Psalm 84, let's go ahead and read verses 1 through 3, and then I'll get us back to where we were at last week, where we left off with. So someone go ahead and read that for us. Psalm 84, verses 1 through 3, please.
How lovely is your tabernacle, O Lord of hosts. My soul longs, yes, even faints, for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. Even the sparrow has found a home, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may lay her young. Even your altars, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God.
Thank you. So as we look at this here, we left off last week talking about this sparrow and the swallow. And it's interesting as we know that gave these two words the meanings for them even to today. Back then, even we see that the sparrow means, it basically means the sparrow is a worthless bird, and the swallow is a wandering bird. So you look at those and, you know, I would think that'd be horrible to be known as worthless something. I mean, you think about the worthless bird, I mean, there's not much to this bird, and that's where it's at really with the sparrow. But we want to see it's important or it's interesting that God has the psalmist use these two birds. And there's a reason for that. We said because they were lowly, they were little, they were humble in a sense, is the best way to really think about it. So last week we left off that we're going through these different things, that it is a place for certain things, that we know that it inspires a sense of devotion for each one of us. And we left off here that it is a place of permanent dwelling. This verse says that the sparrow has found a home. And that's real important to see that there. We thank God that the church is a place basically where we know that we can set down our roots and dwell and be part of His family. That's why when we think about the church, there's two ways to look at the church. Number one is locally, and what would the other one be? Universal. So universal would be what?
Church in its totality.
The church in its totality. The church everywhere. And we would see that. Then you have the church locally, which you would say the local church that's in, like a church here in Cedartown. And you have a church, say, in Rockmart, church in Piedmont, church, in Rome, all these other, Georgia, of course, not Rome, all these other places that we don't understand. And when we look at these, we see that the Bible's clear about putting ourselves under the oversight of an eldership of that congregation, that local church, making that local church our home. And this is where He sees that we set down those roots and dwell, be a part of His family. And this bird is giving us that understanding, this understanding of this, realizing the importance found in the sparrow has found their home. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 58, we read these words. I have this one up here. A lot of them I'm not going to have up here this morning. We'll have to read through them. 1 Corinthians 15:58 tells us, "Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast and immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord." So when we look at this and we think about it, we say, what does this have to do with home? Well, he's saying be steadfast. Steadfast. Don't be movable. Be able to be a part of it. And that's where the word immovable is right there. And when we do that, basically it's talking about always abounding in the work that's going on in the church. And that's what we see there. And the importance that goes along with it. The idea of home, we know, brings to mind the image of well, when you think of home, what do you think of? Let me just ask that. When you think of home, what do you think of there? Family. Anything else? Safety, a place of safety. So a place of family, a place of safety. What else? Anybody else?
Love.
A place of love, okay. Refuge. Peace. Everyone agree with those? And we see all those. Yeah, there's also comfortable, we feel comfortable at home. We should feel comfortable. It's a suitable place for us. And, when we think about that in our own homes, should we be able to say the same thing about the church? Yes, definitely. We know that God, when He set up the church, and Jesus, told the apostles about it, and the church that would come about, that it was to be known as a family of God, and the children of God. And we see how great that is, that we see that. That's why we call each other brothers and sisters. And we have that meaning we find throughout the scriptures. So that's what we can find in the church, and we need to be a part of that and realize it. But also we understand when you go, so that's the area, that permanent dwelling. But it goes a little further. Also, we read in verse 3, that it is also a place for a pilgrim or a wanderer. It can be. It can be a place for a pilgrim. I know people, I'm sure you have too, that, travel better. You would call, I know in Myrtle Beach where my parents used to live, and down there, they had, I forgot, what was that? They had what was called winter, life busted somewhere. Okay. Someone's taking a picture of me. So we the winter birds, they would come down from the northeast, and they would come down to Myrtle Beach for the whole winter, and they would stay there. And, people knew them there. Every year they would be there for the same 3 or 4 months, and they were members of the congregation. They were more like pilgrims, wanderers. They were there, and then understanding, and then they would go back to what was really home during the rest of the year. Well, we see that even during the church. A lot of times we see people traveling, through the churches. See the apostles doing it, other disciples, and we have this happening. But brethren, this isn't talking about, this isn't talking about no one ever making a home of a church. We need to have a place of our home congregation, and that's what we see here. So verse 3, everyone look at verse 3 again of chapter 84, and it says, "Even the sparrow has found a home, and the swallow a nest for herself." It's interesting the difference there. One talks about a home, and the other talks about a nest. And so we find here the sparrow is more of a permanent resident, while the swallow about it. The swallow is referenced as a her. She flies away in the fall and returns in the spring, making her a wanderer. Yet at the tabernacle, the wandering swallow found a place of safety, place of shelter, in the midst of her journeys while she was going through life. The pilgrim saints, same thing. The pilgrim saints have found the church to be the same for them. See, brethren, the house of God is a place of safety. It is a place of shelter. In the cruel world that we live in today, of the things that we have going on around us, it is a place where the cares of life can be laid aside and rest can definitely be found. When you think of the word nest in verse 3, it gives the idea of something that's temporary. You know, I mean, how usually you see a nest and over time you see it do what? It disintegrates, falls apart, or if it's left alone, sometimes it won't be used again. And we see that happening, and it's just, you know, the weather and different things. So the world is temporary where we are but straying pilgrims. But God's spiritual church will be forever. What he's trying to get at here, he's trying to show the difference, is that the world is a place we will always be pilgrims in. But the church is where we need to make a home, where we need to really settle down and be a part of it. In fact, in Hebrews chapter 11, if everyone turns over there with me, Hebrews chapter 11, as we seek this forever home, I don't think I do have that on the board, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and read that for us. Hebrews 11, 14 through 16, please. Hebrews 11, 14 through 16.
Well, they that say much things declare plainly that they seek the country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country that is a heavenly. Wherefore God is not shameful to be called their God, for he that prepared for them a city.
Thank you. So this is what we look for, that we are looking for that forever home. So in other words, is this world our forever home?
No, it's our nest.
It's our nest. That's exactly right. That's all it is. It's temporary. But how often do we treat it as our forever home? Does that happen quite a bit? It can happen. But brethren, we need to realize we are pilgriming right now is what we're doing. We can have a home in the church, and the reason we say that we can have a home in the church is because if we are right with God when we leave here, guess what we're still going to be a part of? The church. We're still going to be at home. And we're looking for that permanent home in heaven. And so that's what this is all about when we see these verses, that he's prepared them a city that they can be a part of. And that's what we look at. Brethren, there's nothing worse than just to be in a temporary state. You know, it's chaotic, it's crazy. I don't know how many here, you know, I know that there's a military that have been on debt, you understand that, or traveled, you know, or maybe traveled for work and you were gone for many, many days, months, whatever it may be. And it's just, it's nothing's the same. It's always just you know, you're waiting to get back where? To get back home. And that's how we have to look at heaven here. And that was the difference we see here with the swallow and the sparrow. He was just trying to show them as the understanding of what is found. Which brings us to this next place. Let's go a little bit further. We know and understand that it is also a place for family. And this is what we discussed a minute ago. That, you know, when you think of home, you think of family. Look at the rest of it there. Look back at verse 3. And it says, "And the swallow a nest for herself, where she may lay her young." See, brother, the Bible tells us that the swallow had found a place to raise her little ones. I mean, think about the lesson. It's just in those few words right there. The lesson of raising her little ones. You know, the church is a place to raise children. And we need to think about it that way. It is a place to raise children. It's a place that children need to be. Here they can, you know, they can hear about Jesus. They can hear about the plan of salvation. They know what it takes to get to heaven. It is in the church that they learn how to worship. They learn how to praise the Lord. And they learn respect a lot of times too. Respect and humility and what's found of us. And they learn that this place is and why they are pilgrimages. Why they are pilgrims. Why we all are while we're here. They are among the redeemed. It is a good place for children to be brought up without a doubt. And I'm saying they should have brought them home. That's got to be done. But children need to be at church, and with the church. Let me say that. I say not in the church, but with the church, and then become a part of the church as time goes on. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, being in the military and traveling, you know, all over, 3 to 5 years is where we would stay. That was the one constant that the kids have, because they go to a new school, things are different. They teach differently, they do things differently, but in the church, you have that constant that's always there. They understood that, and it made a better transition for them.
That's exactly right. I mean, Melissa, being raised, of course, in the military, me being raised in the military, understanding that, and it's true. It's no matter where we went, we always knew the church. We could be and the people, they had the same values, same thoughts, same ideas, and it was, it's one thing to move to another town or something and try to become children in a new school and everything. But when you have those who are in a church, dude, you understand that real quick, and you see that, you be a part of that. It's kind of funny. We were just talking about it the other day. Me and Melissa talking about memories of. We were watching a show or some movie of a high school, and they said, wow, this high school looks like a college. And that's kind of when I was living in California in El Toro, my dad was stationed in El Toro. I went to high school in Irvine, and it was University High was the name of it. And it looked like a university. We had almost 6,000 kids. It was 5,800 kids in our high school alone is what was there. And it was interesting. There was only a handful of military kids. Only a handful of military kids. The rest of all those other kids, I don't know if you knew much about Irvine in the 80s. Irvine became what was known as the new Silicon Valley. I mean, it's where you had everything going on. It was crazy, richness beyond, and it was hard. But we had that. So I had that as a military kid. We got a military kid. But what was even better than that was the church that we saw that we could be established together. And it's so true, and I appreciate the thought of that. And as we go through that, and that's what we see today. In fact, you think about when children are raised in the right atmosphere with the church and with the right example at home, they will usually find their way back to home when they grow up. If they leave, whatever it may be, they find their way back. In fact, Proverbs 3, everyone turn over there with me. Proverbs chapter 3, and I want us to notice here together what it says. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. If someone will go ahead and read that. 1 through 6, yes. 1 through 6. If someone will read that for us, please. And here's Solomon knowing he made a lot of bad mistakes, and, he's reminding his sons, of who they are and what they're about, and not to forget, most importantly, who God is and the law that comes through him and the living for him. So someone going to read that for us. Proverbs 3, 1 through 6.
My son, do not forget my law, but let your heart keep my commands. For length of days and long life and peace they will add to you. Let not mercy and truth forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart, and so find favor and high esteem in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths.
Thank you. I love that verse 4, how it says, find favor and high esteem in the sight of God and man. So we find esteem in God first, and then with humans. I've always found it interesting when you're doing business with somebody and they talk about, some church comes up, you talk about religion comes up, and you just feel a little more comfortable knowing that their values, of who they are and the humility that's found in them. And this is how he's telling his children here, and this is what children learn in the church, and at least what they should be learning in the church, and continue with it. So that's that great example. Turn back now to Psalm 84. That great example here that we're being given is that we are like those birds, and we are to raise our children in the safety and the security that is found in the Lord's church. And as it gives that example there. So it's not only this a place for that we see a family, but it's also a place for the weary. And this is where we need to catch also, because we see in this verse. Everyone look at that verse again. Psalm 84, verse 3. It says, where she may lay her young, even your altars, O Lord host, my King and my God. Blessed are those who dwell in your house. So here the word nest is used again. When you look at the Hebrew, the word nest, we understand, implies a place of rest. The church is a place of rest. It is a place where we can come and lay down our burdens, lay down our cares of life, and find a peace, a place of peace. We find peace, but a place of worship to worship God. I know that without a doubt, I am glad that the Lord has provided his people a haven of rest in the church, as I know you are. And this is what they're trying to show here. They want to remind the people how important the tabernacle and the temple was and how important the church is today. And as we see this, we need to also understand, as you look at this, notice He doesn't mention any other birds. No other birds. Meaning that not all birds that fill the heavens could have dwelt in the tabernacle. I mean, think about some of them. Think about if the eagle was there in that tabernacle with those other birds, and eagles even with people. I mean, it would be, the eagle is very ambitious, I mean, I guess to say the least. And that's what you find with it. Or say the vulture, a vulture. How many want a vulture hanging out here, with us? We see the vulture be too foul. I don't know if we have time to go into what they do after they eat, but it's disgusting. And we have that. Also the hawk. The hawk is too warlike. Not saying that the church, you can't have. We understand people that have been in wartime or military and so on. But he's talking about the hawk. It just wasn't the place as we would see there. Or the barnyard fowl. They are too dependent on humans. Or an owl. He is too fond of darkness. Or a mockingbird. A mockingbird is filled up with himself. I mean, and that's what we see here with these. And so you notice these ones. Once again, I said this is why the whole reason for it. The sparrow and the swallow were lowly and little. And so they found that rest. And then the humility that was there with them. They are not filled with self, but are keenly aware of their needs. And that's what we need to see with us today in the church. We need to be aware of our needs. Aware of what we need from God. And God is willing to take care of us and to do that. They simply appropriated by faith that with the Lord had provided the tabernacle, we see for the people of that day, with us too, so that it is the redeemed, can be just like they are. In the tabernacle, we would say the church. Everyone look at Acts 2. Everyone knows Acts 2 very well. We all did what was basically appropriated by faith. We appropriated the faith, the provisions, I guess you'd say, of the Lord and our Savior Jesus Christ. And we saw Him as our shelter. And we came to Him, those who have made this choice and this decision. Acts 2:37, Peter just got on preaching and they asked him, brethren, what shall we do? Because he gave them the direction and the understanding of who Jesus was and what they needed to be following. And verse 38, he gives them the answer. And what does he say there? Someone go and read that. Acts 2:38.
Then Peter said unto them, repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ, for the remission of sins, and ye shall receive the gift of the Holy Spirit.
Thank you. So he showed them that the provisions that were there were the shelter. They made their shelter in Christ because he was going to save them, take care of them. Then verse 41, look at verse 41, look what it continues there. So Greg, go ahead and read verse 41 also, please.
Then they that gladly received the word were baptized, and the same day they were added unto them about 3,000 souls.
Thank you. So we see this once again. We just see what was happening. They were added together. This is the beginning of the what? What takes place here the first time? This is the beginning of the church established outside of the apostles. This is where we see the church beginning and everything coming about. Now imagine 3,000 souls that first day, about 3,000 souls added, and they were all there because they found safety, they found shelter, they found a home where they needed to be. But it didn't end there. Look at verse 46 now. I want you also notice verse 46 through 48. And Greg, let us have you go ahead and read that too. 46 and 48, please.
And they continued.
47. I'm sorry. 46 and 47. Go ahead. You won't find 48. You can look all day for it. You won't find it. All right, go ahead.
And they continued daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, and did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily such as be saved.
Thank you. I mean, look at that. It says they were eating their food with gladness, simplicity of the heart. It was a simple place to be. And this is kind of my, I guess you say, not going to say hobby horse, but pet peeve. It gets kind of tough sometimes. It's really difficult to listen to somebody teach or preach and not understand what they're saying. Just talking above our heads, way beyond everything. And I've had that, saying $50 million words left and right. And there's nothing wrong with saying words. Explain it though a little bit. And we see this, and I want to show you, it was never like that in the church. Never. Everybody needed to be able to understand. It needed to be simple. And that's the simplicity of the heart, he says, of what they were doing, what they were going through. And I love that with the apostles, the way they wrote, the way they explained some things. And don't think they weren't educated. Luke was a very educated man. The one who wrote over half of the Bible. Who was that? Over half the New Testament. Paul. Was he an educated man?
Yes.
He was very educated. But he was able to talk in a way that people would understand. And what's interesting, guess who those words were coming from? God. And that's what we see here. That's what makes us feel at peace, makes us feel comfortable. Therefore, we have found a place of perfect peace and rest in the tabernacle of the soul. And the tabernacle of the soul is Jesus Christ. And that's what we see in these verses that we can understand, which now brings us back, all the way back to Psalm 84. Everyone turn back over there to Psalm 84. And I want you to notice verse 10 now. Psalm 84, we're going to jump to verse 10. And this will be our last verse that we'll look at in this chapter. Psalm chapter 84, verse 10 basically inspires a sense of duty. Brethren, we need to have a sense of duty in the church. And we need to really realize how important this is. How important it was in the tabernacle. How important it was in the temple. How important it is in the church today. So we're going to read verse 10 for us, please. Verse 10 there of Psalm 84.
For a day in your courts is better than 1,000. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of wickedness.
Think about that for a moment. In this verse, we are told that they would rather serve in the tabernacle as just the one who opened the door. And then one to waste their time and energy serving the world and the devil. I mean, what a lesson to the child of God. We see where we need to be, what they desire to be a part of in the duty. He said basically, I'll do whatever needs to be done just as long as I'm there. I just want to be there and be a part of it. And that's what we see when the doors are open. The church should be together. And the importance that comes with it. Rather than the church is a place where we can exercise our gifts in the Lord. And we need to realize this. We know we don't have the spiritual gifts the way the apostles had and everything. But we know we have gifts, each and every one of us. We have at least, how many?
At least one.
At least one. The Bible talks about that talent. You know, we have at least one and the understanding of it. But most people, guess what? Most people have more than one. And especially when they find that one, they start building on that one. And it has to do with the church and everything that's great with it. Brethren, what we learn real quickly is that there is a job for every Christian. Meaning, I like this kind of meaning, there is a purpose for each and every one of us in the church. There is a purpose for every one of us. And He saved us. This is what's important. Christ saved us to serve the church. He saved us to be a part. In fact, everyone turn over to Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. I don't have that one up there either. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. And I want us to notice here how important this is, that how we can find and understand that He saved us to serve. He saved them, as we would see during that time, to where they could just be there to be the doorkeeper. You know, it was more just being a doorkeeper. It was more just wanting to be there with everybody. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10 tells us what? Someone go and read that for us, please.
For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them.
Thank you. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. What does that mean to you? Anybody? For we are His workmanship.
There's work to do.
There's work to do. There's constantly work to do, isn't there? We are His working people. That's what it is. We are His, His working people, the talent that we have, that we're able to do and be a part of. And I've had some say, Bernie, there's really nothing I can do in the church. And I said, oh yeah, I'll tell you, I'll give you something. I mean, there's always something that we can all be a part of. And sometimes that's all that someone wants. They just want to feel wanted. And that's what we see over the church, that we can feel wanted. We are wanted. That's the best way to look at it, by everyone that's part of it. James 2:18. Everyone look at James 2:18 with me for just a moment. I want everybody to see that, please. James chapter 2:18. And you think about James here, how he's explaining his words and the importance that goes along with it about the work that we are a part of. So we'll go ahead and read James 2:18, talk about our faith and works.
Yea, a man may say, Thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works.
Isn't that interesting? The ending of it. I will show you my faith. How? By my works. So in other words, we see faith, and we've said this before, the book of Hebrews chapter 11, we call that chapter what? The heroes of what? Faith. Every single one of them are faith of action. It's action. It's work that they're doing that show their faith. And that's what we see today. So when we say we are faithful servants of God, or we are faithful Christians, We're going to show that faith through our works. That's how it's done. And that's how we demonstrate that to not only others, but guess who we demonstrate it to? God, but also importantly to ourselves. We demonstrate it to ourselves that we're able to do those things. There are those, I guarantee, brethren, those who want to be a part of the church, but this happens all the time. There are those who want to be a part of the church, but they do not want to have a part in the church. That can't happen. That just cannot happen. And, I've heard this saying many times growing up, that, that 10% of the church really does it. The church does everything for the church. And that's a sad figure. That's a sad thought. And we don't ever want to fall into that category. What should be the percentage of the church wanting to do stuff with God? 100%. 100%. It's not me close the door up here. 100% we see that and realize that. And how great it is. And, brother, it comes down once again to a heart thing, an attitude. I want to do this. I want to be a part. Now, does this mean that every person in the congregation has to preach? Does that mean every person in the congregation has to be a teacher? Does that mean every person in the congregation needs to be a deacon or an elder? No. But is there something that every person can do? Definitely. We can and we see that and understand the fact with it. So what we need to do is we need to be encouraged each other to be active in the work of the church and find, here it is, we need to take the time and the opportunity to find our purpose and then pursue it with everything we have. And I guarantee you do that, your time on this earth will be so much better because you will have something so much greater to work towards with our workmanship being in the Lord. And how wonderful it is. So let the Lord use our life here for His glory. Let us lay up treasures in heaven. In fact, Matthew chapter 6, I don't have it there. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Everyone turn over there with me real quick. In Matthew chapter 6, as we close this out, we find that Jesus is teaching on the Sermon on the Mount here. And these people had forgotten about the work of the Lord. They had forgotten where they needed to be and what they needed to be doing. And He was trying to remind them and get them in the right thought. It's the same thing like we find in Psalm 84, that the psalmist, the son of Korah there, we're trying to say, look, this is what we need to be doing. This is what we need to be a part of. Everything of our life involves being a part of God. And we know today everything in our life involves being a part of God and a part of Christ. So we have to lay up treasures, not here, even though it's nothing wrong to have stuff. Don't think that. I'm not saying that. Nothing wrong to have things, to be a part of things. But our treasure, our main treasure, what do you desire the most? It needs to be laid up in heaven. Not here. Matthew 6, someone going to read that verse 19 and see what it says, 19 and 20.
Lay not up for yourself treasures upon the earth, where moth, rust, doeth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourself treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doeth corrupt, where thieves do not break through and steal.
Thank you. Has anybody here ever been stolen from? Just about. Let me see hands. I'm curious. Look at that. Almost every single one of us have had something stolen here. That's never going to happen to heaven. In other words, nothing can be stolen, specifically our souls. It's not going to be done. And we have that. And let me ask you this. When someone stole from you, how upset did you get? Did it upset you? I'm sure it did. I mean, it's upsetting. It hurts. And it's even worse when you know the person who did it. It really hurts. It stings. Here's the thing with Christ in heaven. If we lay our treasures up there, we never have to worry about that. We never have to worry about it. How many things do you have here that are rusting and falling apart? How many things, clothes just fall apart? When I think of Matthew 6, verse 19, 20, I think about the Israelites walking through the wilderness for 40 years and their clothes staying together and their sandals. Just remarkable. I mean, how many here have clothes like that? I mean, you think about it, and we see that that's because God was supplying that miracle for them that was taking place. And that you and I can have the same thing here to store our treasure up in heaven, to be with Him, and know we could be there one day and enjoy it forever. Any comments or questions? That's Psalm 84. Yes, go ahead.
I keep thinking back to the first part of 84, when it talks about the sparrow, and that it's a common bird. There's no color, no pride, no anything. in those particular ones. And those are the people that God chooses. Because in the church, you know, I think it was Marshall King who said, the ground at the foot of the cross is level.
Yes.
There's no distinction of color or anything.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, it's exactly it. I mean, you know, we don't want to be peacocks. I mean, that's the way you think about it, the way a peacock is. And you know, you look, they're beautiful, but they're not humble at all. If you've ever been around one, and you see that, and you know, but that is so true, and I love that. Marshall Kimball did say it, said it's level at the bottom of the cross. And that's how we need to think about it, Psalm 84, that everybody's accepted in the church needs to come to it and be a part of it. And they do that by following the will of God and following what is there being established in that.
And the other thing is this idea of everybody working. I thought of a dog sled team. You know, there's always that lead dog that he's the strongest, he's the hardest working, and so on. But the others are pulling too, maybe not as much, but they're still pulling, they're still helping that sled to.
That's right. That lead dog couldn't do it by himself. There's no way. I mean, it's just, and that's what we see that. And you know who that lead dog is? We have to look at. That's Christ. We are the followers, and then we think about it that way, how great it is. So that's it. Any comments or questions there? Guess what? It's actually 10:44. I mean, it's like, wow, I finally did it. Ended rubber. I think I've done that twice now. Next week, just give you an idea where we are, because it goes right into it. Talks about, okay, there we go. It goes right into this area of the church, and moving forward is the next division. And Division 4, or Book 4, as we would call it, Psalm 90 through 106. It is, this area is probably the most, how would I say, probably the most encouraging section in the entire Bible. The entire Bible. Psalm 90 through 106, the most encouraging book that you'll find. When I say book, I mean because the way it was written. And so it'll be, hopefully we'll get a lot out of it. We'll get to see, it's pretty long introduction. We'll go through it, discuss everything that's here. And so if you get a chance, go home and read Psalm 90 through 106. You're like, that's a lot. You can do it in a week. All right, so any comments or questions before we close? Anybody at all? Nope. All right, we're going to close there. Thank you.